27 years, this land stood untouched, so only seeing parts of it cut off, closed, and adapted. However, now the whole land will see the axe, as it is being permanently closed to make way for a future addition to the park. But what went wrong? What went right? And how could this shape the next generation of a theme park land? As the real reason behind its closure is not necessarily what you may think. The Lost Continent opened alongside the rest of Islands of Adventure back in 1999 as the expansion to Universal Orlando with its second theme park. Within it provided a great mix between different types of attractions, as well as a general immersive theme that did not require paying licensing fees to third parties. By the end of this video, you'll understand what led to its ultimate downfall, and how time was not necessarily its best friend, even though the overall principle was extremely solid even until this day. And more importantly, we will explore what is likely replacing this land and what steps will it take to improve upon its previous mistakes. At the time, this land was extremely beautiful and a vast sprawling addition to Islands of Adventure's lineup, immersing guests into the Greek mythology as well as the overall world and architecture of it, exploring and covering different areas like Poseidon, Sinbad, and Merlin. Exploring these familiar tales was their own unique twist, each accompanied by its own popular attraction, like incorporating Merlin into a dueling roller coaster, having Sinbad be the star of a stunt show, and Poseidon anchoring a walkthrough experience. While in many ways this was extremely revolutionary in each attraction being state of the art, over time though it was where it succeeded where it also began to crack. For instance, while the massive scale of the land did allow for guests to go and explore each individual realms, as well as continue this elaborate story, it also had a bunch of space that could have been better utilized for other intellectual properties. And while it did have expansion plots, these expansion plots never ended up becoming for the Lost Continent, but rather was added in addition to the current Lost Continent, as parts of the Lost Continent would be chopped off and rethemed into future editions, like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which was a great and fully immersive addition over to Universal Orlando's lineup and really did shape how they viewed a theme park, not just selling the theme park ticket, but also the immersive fandom and opportunities that it offers those fans as well as the opportunity for Universal to gain some extra cash in addition to the already sold theme park ticket, providing guests another opportunity and level when it comes to that fully immersive aspect that a theme park can offer. To make way for this immersive edition though, Merlin would, as well as the roller coaster, would be rethemed and incorporated into that new land, seeing the shopping and dining areas of Merlinwood being rethemed into Hogsmeade, and the roller coaster rethemed into Dragon Challenge, based around the popular 4th book. And while this roller coaster was rethemed into the Harry Potter section of the park, it did so show that Universal wanted to have that massive anchor roller coaster draw for that park in its overall lineup, choosing to retheme the roller coaster into that new addition to not only help elongate the lifespan of the roller coaster, but also still provide that desire and placement for it in the parks to help add to its overall draw. And when the roller coaster did eventually reach this point in its lifespan where it needed to be retracked, Universal replaced it with another massive e-ticket in its place to help keep that spot in its lineup. Unfortunately though, with that massive anchor e-ticket and draw to the lineup being no longer part of the Lost Continent, this was the start of the end for the overall area, as not only was it smaller now, it lost one of its major draws, and a reason to really go and visit that section of the park, now just leaving a stunt show and the walkthrough experience. As well, these were both fantastic experiences in their own right. It was not a major ride or draw that guests really want to come and see. As well, these attractions were so great, they would not provide that initial boost and continued popularity that rides typically offered, no longer having the ability to really expand and build out the Lost Continent like they once could have. Lost Continent slowly became less of a desirable land and more just a walkthrough to those more popular intellectual properties that guests began to gravitate towards over time, as well as bringing substantially more revenue than those Greek stories that Universal was telling. As a result of this overall decline in attendance, as well as the increasing complexity and maintenance costs of their existing attractions, the Lost Continent would soon lose another major attraction to its lineup in the form of the 8th Voyage of Sinbad in September of 2018 due to the low guest satisfaction and high costs over it that had developed over time, leaving the theater empty and abandoned for the majority of its use and lifespan after this closure, only being temporarily used mainly as an overflow queue space for Hagrid's, till Hagrid's themselves chose to expand its queue, no longer saw a need for the Voyage of Sinbad, while also preparing this area for its future replacement, and there was no longer a critical need for that landmass inside the parks. However, this closure would get even worse, as Poseidon's Fury would also close down the road over in 2023. While an exact reason was unknown at the time, it was one of those shows that Universal did continue to try and reinvest guests into those attractions over the years, seeing several different versions and iterations of this same walkthrough-based experience. Unfortunately though, Universal decided this ride was too complex as well as not drawing in enough people to help keep it around for the foreseeable future. As well, they did try really hard, even giving it a massive refurbishment before its closure. There was likely too much headache behind the scenes to make it worth it for Poseidon to live another day. As a result, for the next few years, the Lost Continent was that beautiful land, but unfortunately now just home to some shopping and dining experiences. As well architecturally beautiful, it functionally didn't serve a purpose anymore when it came to this popular theme park and needed to be drastically renovated, demolished, and replaced to help make way for a new, better, and exciting future that learned upon some of its former areas, as well as implementing some of its previous successes, like those fully immersive aspects of the land, providing a great way for guests to immerse themselves into a story, but now doing so in a way in which guests could spend the extra money, as well as be additional motivation, whether it be smaller experiences that were add-on opportunities and experiences in their own right, like the power-up bands found in lands like Super Nintendo World, as well as just having the overall popularity and characters for guests to want to go and buy those merchandise. As well, Universal did really try to help innovate and make this land more attracting in its own areas, like adding the Madagascar characters. Ultimately, these were just a band-aid on a sinking ship. It was ultimately time for the city to sink altogether once again, in a vast land in one of its most popular theme parks. Now with a flood of new permits and overall rumors coming to this area, as well as part of the land starting its demolition process, with Universal stating that the work is part of site planning to ensure the area is ready for new projects. I think it's time the Lost Continent will be permanently closed for good, having an official closing date announced soon. And while the exact details of this demolition are unknown at this time, it is likely that the whole land will be mostly demolished, only keeping some key infrastructure areas to it, as one of the only areas I think could ultimately stand the test of time would be that backstage marina, which provides that critical infrastructure for Islands of Adventure Lagoon, as well as the Misso's restaurant, a restaurant that while beloved as it does serve great food and has a great view of the overall lagoon, is also a key infrastructure project that Universal would want to have in its new land, as they would want to have that anchor restaurant to help increase more revenue, as well as serve the food and dining needs for those patrons of the park, while also saving on the infrastructure costs. As for the rest of this land, I do think those shopping and dining locations, some of which have already been relocated into the port of entry area of the park, will ultimately all be demolished. When it comes to the overall sentiment of the land, most people do agree that it was a beautiful land that unfortunately had to be cut short, but even when it wasn't necessarily in its prime, it was such a cool area to walk through and admire. In addition to this, there's also the great passion and fandom for what it did offer, as well it was not necessarily directly tied to a well-known established intellectual property. It still provides those great draws and unique memories to them, with some guests even wanting to see it return once again down the road, like they did with Dueling Dragons in the Berlin Woods section of the park, featuring it in a Halloween Horror Nights based house. As for what this replacement could be, one of the leading rumors is Pokémon, and I do think that this would have a high likelihood of ultimately coming to the resort due to the high popularity of the characters over in Japan, as well as just how popular Super Nintendo World is over at Epic Universe. In addition to this, Pokémon not only has a great fandom, but is also known among several generations of guests, including younger and older audiences, as well as having the great potential to further increase the popularity and profitability of this IP at the park, having several ways in which Universal could build another iteration of the interactive wands or power-up fan experiences. In addition to this, when it comes to these characters, the popularity of these characters is generational, as well as much more well known and up to date with today's audiences, unlike the Greek mythology that the land was previously based around with the Lost Continent. In addition to this, while the Lost Continent did have those two attractions to really help balance out the overall draw and popularity to them, these now closed attractions also took up a vast amount of space. And while some areas could still be greatly successful, like a stage show if done right as seen in Epic Universe with two massive hits of a stage show, it also takes up a vast amount of space and is an outdoor venue. In addition to this, the Science Fury is a walkthrough attraction that doesn't really bring in the draw of crowds like they once did, and as a result it would make more sense for Universal to just demolish these existing infrastructure and build a more purpose-built section of the park that could house a massive e-ticket in addition to a smaller draw of an attraction, something that would have much more popularity longer term than having a new version of a walkthrough and stage show, as well as bringing much more draw, as this land wouldn't just be a re-theme, but rather a whole brand new land, but feels truly fresh and new. In addition to this land could utilize some newer layout techniques, helping give guests the opportunity to go and explore more of the different areas of the land instead of just feeling like a walkthrough to the other land as a whole, providing guests more opportunities to come face to face with iconic characters and buy more merchandise, but also done so in a way to help encourage guests to spend longer time inside of that land and overall reduce the overall wait time and crowdedness of other areas of the park to help balance out an already incredible lineup over at Islands of Adventure. So while the Lost Continent did ultimately end up closing, it was not necessarily a failure, but a beautiful test of time and how a theme park can adapt and change over time. As well was initially that perfect example of it, guest patterns and strategies can change over time, as well as how Universal began to implement and use its theme parks, helping build upon some areas of its success, like having those draws of the e-tickets and overall beautiful architecture style of the land, and providing key infrastructure areas to it, while also giving them the opportunity to truly reinvent that portion of the land so guests will spend more time and money inside of it and provide the next decade of a draw for this park that saw its last major addition back in 2021. As well, so it does bring in those massive crowds, and its lineup is still great. Its overall popularity and draw is starting to show a steady decrease, while still bringing in massive crowds isn't at the peak that it once was, and especially with new additions like Epic Universe bringing to the table another park to Universal's lineup, it's time that Islands of Adventure receives more of that magic and boost once again for the next set of guests that will walk through its gates.